what continues to interest me is to become a deeper and deeper student of the human animal, like looking for the long lost owner's manual to meet.
Welcome to the Tip the Scales podcast, where we discuss running and growing your law firm. I'm your host, Maria Monroy, president and co-founder of LawRank. You guys are probably sick of him, but we are joined again by Joe Freed, the one and only. And I'm super excited because my conversations with Joe are some of my favorite. My favorite. He's right here.
We talked about recognizing that human beings are more alike than they are different.
And how you use that in law. We talked about death and losing relevancy in the legal space.
We talked a little bit about decisions and the emotional underpinnings that are always at play.
Oh, we talked about my shopping addiction.
And we talked about a really important parenting tip.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys enjoy this one.
Are we being recorded right now?
Yeah. Have you slowed down?
No.
I thought that's what you were working on.
So, yeah, no, I've not slowed down. I have, it just keeps being an iteration of me. Like but it doesn't feel like slowing down. Things are changing, but not really slowing down.
What do you mean by things are changing?
Things are evolving. I'm focused on a lot of things we've talked about before.
Okay.
It's a continuation of that. And then, law is increasingly, the practice of law is increasingly sort of the laboratory where I get to see if this stuff sticks in the real world that goes through my mind about, everything from, just human connection and then what matters and what juries, how people are making decisions, how I make decisions. I'm taking a course right now on decisions, which is really interesting because it's based on the idea of that decisions really are what I've talked about forever, which decisions are really made at an emotional level, and then we backfill logic. We think we've made the decision based on some logic tree, but we've really made the decision based on some emotional something, and then we backfill the logic. And so this course is based on an idea that I'd never really considered before, and that's that when something feels like a decision, there's some avoidance going on that's at an emotional level. And the premise is that if you stop avoiding, then decision making becomes easier. But that requires you to understand what the emotion is that you're trying to avoid, and then actually welcome that emotion instead of trying to push it away or make it go away or view it as bad.
So are you talking about a scenario where you are not making a decision?
Where you're stuck. And I mean, like you make hundreds of choices every day, most of which don't feel like decisions, right?
Right.
You choose to brush your teeth in the morning. It's not, should I brush my teeth? Should I not? How long should I brush it? Exactly how much toothpaste should go on there, and should I put it on this way, or should I squeeze it from the bottom or from the top? Those things don't even enter your mind, but they are choices that you're making. But then when something feels like a decision, there's some like stuckness. You're stuck between two choices, right? And that feels very much like a decision. And for a lot of people, including me at times, it feels stuck. You feel, and you can't. And so what's really going on there, at least according to what I'm studying now, is this idea that you're really trying to avoid feeling something. So we do these crazy exercises like, I did X today in order to not feel blank.
Interesting.
And, you're getting in touch with things that you might want to avoid, or emotional things that you're trying to avoid. Like if I don't want to, like one of the things in my life, I don't want to feel lonely. I don't want to feel alone. So I did X today so that I wouldn't feel alone. Or, I drove like an idiot today because I didn't want to feel disrespected by the person who cut me off. I mean, like silly things like that, but it's like to recognize that we do act. I mean, in our lives, the things we're acting in order to potentially in order to feel or not feel something.
Have you read The Power of Decision?
I don't think so. Is that what this is
I
about?
haven't read it, but it's
So
been
let's not
recommended
talk
to me.
about it. Just kidding.
I can't talk about it, but I think it's been recommended to me and I want to read it. And I think you should read it too since you're on this.
And then we can do a little book review.
Yeah. We can start a
Cool.
book club, a self-help book club. You're
That's
liking the
perfect
thinking.
for us. We don't have anything else to do, so
Nothing.
that's awesome.
Nothing. We can just do that.
Come back we'll have that done within like the next 8 years.
Yeah. I was going to say the next day,
Oh,
but
tomorrow.
I was being sarcastic. You were being
Also sarcastic.
you were being
Well,
honest.
realistic.
You were being realistic.
Right. No, but I mean, these are fun things to think about. But back to what we were talking about before is what continues to interest me is to become a deeper and deeper student of the human animal, like looking for the long lost, owner's manual to me, you know, which I think is not unlike anybody else. So those kind of thoughts then are what I play with and try to develop new concepts, or at least revised concepts for living and law, both. Does it make sense or not
Yeah,
really?
it does. And I'm curious how you have noticed, like, how do I phrase this? How, like, now that you've been testing this in trial or maybe in mediations or whatever, like depositions, whatever it is that you do, what have you found?
I've found a lot of things. Like I keep finding how much the same we are. And we have a tendency, especially today with politics being what it is and everything else, we focus on these few things that are differences between human beings. But I think so. Like 99% of our experiences as human beings is the same, and so what that means is that I'm learning that I can trust that some of my experiences that feel like they've been uniquely mine and maybe painful are probably not uniquely mine. They're probably just part of the human condition. And so I can speak to that. I'm free. I feel more permission to speak to that, and then people open up more. So it's about like a vulnerability thing. I've also learned that I use vulnerability as a shield as much as I use it for anything else. And I'm here. I am admitting something again, and I don't think I've ever admitted that out loud. It's fairly recent that I've recognized it.
Can you explain? Because I don't know what you mean.
Yeah, I'm a lot. A lot of people's experience of me is that I'm willing to be very vulnerable and very open. And I realize that that's true, but I use that to deflect from things that I don't really want anybody to see. If I show something that seems to the world to be vulnerable, that kind of almost like appeases that, and then they don't look further. So I do that to myself also, like I'm vulnerable to myself, but there's deeper things that I am trying to avoid people see, including myself, or feel. And so that's what I'm working on now, is trying to say, okay, you're being vulnerable. I'm not saying this very well, but you're being vulnerable so that are you being truly fully vulnerable, or are you still guarding something?
Mm. So, like, you come across as vulnerable, but you're not really being vulnerable.
Right.
Huh. So that's just manipulative.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's been I don't I'm not using the word manipulative in the sense of like I've been consciously trying to. I think this is kind of an awareness thing for me. Is that
But, like, don't you think you're being maybe, like, a little hard on yourself? Like, because when does it end, right? Like, you hyperanalyze everything. Like, does it ever end?
No, but I'm not being critical of myself.
Okay. You're not.
It may sound like that, but I see this as kind of an exercise in self-respect and love, and it's to recognize it. I'm not judging it. Um,
Okay.
I'm really actually doing much better about that than ever before. I mean, it's been a few years since I've stopped working with Mark. A lot of that stuff has stuck with me. I mean, a lot of those lessons that I learned from him really have stayed around, And part of those lessons, one of those lessons is the idea of, is it useful to judge yourself or not, or what's really going on, during those times. And, you know, I've kind of given up on that. So I'm really not judging.
That's good. I'm happy to hear. Now, you said that we're all the same.
Yeah, there's some differences.
Of course. Of course. But how does that help you in trial?
So it helps because, an example is when you think about damages. I helped somebody recently with a situation where they came to me and they said, I'm going to lose this case. And there were liability issues, but we don't need to talk about that. But we got to the damages issues, and they said, okay, even if we get through the liability issues, all these focus groups say there's just no value in the case. They don't care. Part of the reason jurors don't care is because when they don't see liability, they don't care about the damages. But that's a whole other story. But in this particular case, it was a woman who had fallen down. She had broken her foot and her toes and her foot, and it had all healed up. It took some time. It healed up. And the, quote, only thing left was that if she put high heels on, it was painful for her to put high heels on. And, the way he was presenting that, it just wasn't very meaningful to anybody.
That's very meaningful.
Right. But why?
Because of the way that high heels can make you feel.
Right. Okay. So here's how everybody's the same. That is not only true for women. That feeling is like almost not a name for that feeling. Like part of it is sexy. Like I want to feel sexy. Part of it is powerful.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it's like something that there's not really a word for it. But like to me, the word confident, to me, the word is like just yes. Like, I mean, there's like not a name for that.
I mean, that could be like a car for a man.
But that's right. So that's what I started thinking. Okay, so that's not just a woman thing.
Okay.
It's a everybody thing. So I asked him, I said, let's develop the jury selection to be around, let's ask everything. Let's introduce this subject, and then let's go around the jury and ask everybody what it is. So what happens is for a woman, it's, for some woman, she might say, it's that, but she might say it's her high heels, but some of them, it's, there's a bag. When I carry this bag, I feel like a frickin' million gazillion bucks. And I feel like, or there's a piece of jewelry, or there's high heels, or there's, I've got my, whatever, my dress.
Your watches.
Right. So, but it is. So for men, for men, it may be also something they wear. Maybe there's a suit. I put that suit on but the whole idea is to bring everybody together. So everybody's together. And so then here's what the case becomes about. The case becomes about, look, I know this case is about somebody falling down, but you know what the case is really about? The other side, they say this feeling, this that we're talking about is not valuable. And I say it's valuable, right?
Very valuable.
That's the binary, right? We've talked about, the speed trial concept is the idea of creating binary choices for the jury because it's easier for us to make decisions when they're binary.
What do you mean by that?
It's like a light switch. It's either on or off. There's not an in between. So people are either going to say this is important, this is not important. Okay, so we can talk more about that in a sec, but just to finish this concept, the idea was to generalize, to move away from high heels, to get underneath high heels, if that's the right way to say it. So what's the emotional, universal human thing? feeling that's there. And to recognize that that is not only a female thing, that's everybody, universal. It just may appear differently. And
Right.
then you say the other side thinks that's not valuable. I say it is valuable. They say no, I say yes, light switch. Okay. Now, I know I don't get to decide this, but I'm not going to let them to decide it. That's why we needed you, ladies and gentlemen, to come from your businesses and your homes to speak for this community. And you get to decide for this community, is that valuable or is it not? And if it is, I mean, the way you're going to answer that is you're going to put a number on this verdict form. And that's going to be the way you define if it's valuable or not. So see what's been done in that is a number of things. One is to recognize that there is something that's universal that ties us together. We make the case about that. And then we invite the people in the community to make a decision about that, which we've pulled together. It's very, very different conceptually from saying, this lady who none of us know fell down and broke her leg, and what's this about for her? It's kind of making the case about the jurors, and they get to decide for themselves what that feeling is worth. But it's tied them all together, because I think that the other thing about the human animal that we're all alike is we're pretty self-centered and selfish. Okay, so we can pretend that that's not true. We can pretend that we're altruistic, but the reality is, even when we're being altruistic, we're kind of doing it to make ourselves feel altruistic,
right?
Because that makes us feel good, right? So, what if jury trials and the development of a case can at least in part be about hunting for, finding, reaching for something that feels universally true? Focus groups could be used to help do that. Getting to something that's deeply emotional, true, and valuable. I mean, truly valuable. And then structuring the trial around bringing that out for everybody. You see how it's different than what you hear of people
now,
building cases around.
Do you also, because we've talked about like the thing you do, I don't know what to call it, but where you feel an emotion. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
I didn't want to say that. That you feel an emotion to have them feel the emotion. So in this particular scenario, did you feel the feeling of what it feels like, whatever it is for you to have that feeling that she would have?
That's so intuitive. I mean, you really are always intuitive in your stuff, but that's a really, really intuitive to put that together. Because I did. I mean, for me, and this was just my process, when I started listening to this guy talk about high heels, I allowed myself to go just into the emotional space of what's really going on. So I was trying to channel that to some degree, and then kind of release that back out. And so it takes a little something, I don't know what to call it, to recognize, to have trust that there is something that's universal, right? So it's about, I'm not articulating again, but really, really well, but the idea is if you feel it and you make it, in this context, what happens is you give permission to everybody to go and find that place for them. For some people, it's really easy. It just happened this morning.
I mean,
for
I
other
can feel
people,
it.
they have to go.
Like
right?
when you talk about it, I can feel it because
Right.
I know I love clothes and heels and purses, and like the way that they make me feel, I can tap into that feeling very quickly. I assume not everybody can, and it could be different, right? Like I assume somebody that plays sports, like maybe that's when they feel that.
Sure.
Right? Like it could be a gazillion things that make you feel that.
But the important thing is that it's almost like there's a Maslow's hierarchy of basic human feelings. Right? And so what I'm suggesting and what we're talking about is that we as trial lawyers should be tapping into that and digging for that and make the case about that.
How did the trial go?
It went really well. The guy ended up with a multi-million-dollar result from the case. He called me from the trial. He literally tried it the next week. He said, that was fun. That was awesome. He actually said, this is your verdict. I'm like, it's not my verdict. You went and did it. But,
Who was
This is a lawyer in Atlanta. It's kind of a little on appeal, so I don't want to tell too much
Okay.
about it right now.
Got it.
But it's I think it took great courage to go and do it, because it's what we're talking about is different, right? It's like approaching these cases differently. And you're either brilliant or the biggest dumbass in the world, sometimes based on what the outcome is. So it takes courage to step into something different, because if it doesn't work out,
But maybe if it doesn't work out, it wasn't going to work out anyways.
I think in that case, he was heading for a disaster. That case was not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I could see that, because I could see how not everybody would understand. Like the heels analogy is like too easy for me to understand, right?
Right, but he didn't even put the heels analogy together. Like I had to say, is there anything left? Is there anything residual from this? And so he didn't even appreciate.
Got it. I thought that was her issue. Like,
No,
I'm
I
upset
didn't
about
dig
this.
for it. Like what's left in this, right?
I think that's the biggest. That's the bigger lesson there.
Yeah. And so, but at the end of the day, I mean, we are humans. We have emotional needs. And if our case can be about that, in another way, I'm turning this in a little bit different way, but I've handled cases in a lot of different places, over 40 states, and within each state, some of them multiple jurisdictions within those states. So sometimes, a state's not the same. I mean, like even Florida, Miami's very different than Jacksonville, right?
Oh my God, two different countries.
And California, LA is different from, Fresno is different from. I mean, all the there's different personalities and there's different things. But if we go to, I think, any jurisdiction, I'll say in the United States, but my bet is way beyond that, and we start asking jurors, what are the things that are most important and valuable in your life? I've done this enough now where I know the list. I know that if I don't even have to push them in any direction, but I know that things that'll go on that list will include things like family. That's going to be in the top few. And if somebody says family spontaneously and I go, should family be on the list? Everybody goes, yep, let's put family on the list. Let's say this is the selection of the jury. Says, I just want to understand what's important in your life, family. How about, and I could prod for some things, like how about your sense of self-determination, like choosing to live your life the way you want to, as opposed to it being thrust upon you? Yes, that goes up on the list. So independence, yes.
Agency, yeah.
Agency goes up on the list. I mean, somebody might even say something like, my pickup truck. Like they think they're joking, but they're not. Okay, so what is it about your pickup truck? It's the way I feel. Okay,
Yep.
so what is that feeling? Okay, so it's freedom, it's independence, it's I can run over some thing that's trying to stop me from getting somewhere. I mean, what is that? Okay, so we put that up on the board. If we turn it a little bit and we say, what would be some of the most challenging things, like the worst kind of existence? If you think about it for a while, or if I tweak it, somebody would say something like, to be a burden on those who I love.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from people.
But if we go beneath that into all the true emotional feeling and recognize that what we're digging for is a universal feeling that you don't have to be female to necessarily have. You don't have to be someone who wears high heels to necessarily have, but to recognize that there's this underlying feeling that we don't even necessarily have a name for, in language for, but that everybody has felt in some way. And then if I can make the case about that, then the case is about each juror, right? And so then we moved from that into thinking about, from my perspective, almost like building what's your case about from a thematic perspective. And my belief is that no matter where you go in the United States, jurors, human beings, if we pull them together and start to ask them questions about what is most valuable and important in their lives, I think we're going to get the same list. I think it's the kind of things like family and sense of security and sense of independence and agency, and those health would be on the list. And you can turn it in the other direction, like we said. What's the worst thing would be a burden, to feel like I'm now, I've lost those things that,
right,
like agency, I've lost my independence and now I've got to rely on somebody else. I've lost my sense of safety. Safety would be high on that list. Like, I can't
Control.
sleep at night because I'm going to have one eye open because I feel unsafe, right? So if we know that to be true all over the country right now, that's what jurors would say, that's what humans would say, then shouldn't we be building our cases around that? So, like, it's not about the broken arm. It's not about the pain even of the pain syndrome. It's about how it affects family. It's about how it affects sense of safety. It's about how it affects these things that are universally true for all of us. And now what we're doing by doing this is, for a long time, I've talked about the idea that the magic happens in a trial when the case ends up being about each juror. Like, if you can make the case about the jurors, then we're feeding the self-centered, relatively selfish
ego,
which all of us have,
mm-hmm.
right? Whether we
and
own
this
it
can
or
be
not.
done in any trial,
That's
any
my
case.
point. That's my point. If it can be, if it's what you make the case about. And so, like, even yesterday when I was speaking down here at NTL, one of my messages was, folks, don't forget, you choose what you're making the case about. You can make it about the incident that is the basis of the case, or you can make it about these universal human thematic things that the incident just happens to be the catalyst for getting to these. So it's not, we're here about a truck crash case, but what we're really here about is how this affected family, and they say that's not important or valuable, and we say it is.
Yeah. Or health,
or health,
agency, all of it.
safety.
But can I ask you something? Like, two questions. Like, one is, are you saying that this is a better way every time? That's question number one. Question number two is, have you ever either done like big data, or what's the other one called, where the people actually show up?
Just, I don't know, larger focus group.
Yeah,
like
a
bigger,
focus group.
Yeah.
Or focus group, like trying it one way versus the other to see how much of a.
Not so. First of all, I'm never a one way or the highway person. I'm always I do think that this is a way that should be considered each time.
Okay.
And if you listen to me speak at these conferences, I'm usually the guy saying, I don't care what you decide to do, just do it with intention, right? Like, you look around at in the broad picture and then make a conscious choice instead of it just being some rote thing that you did. And my work in this area, I don't know, I've not specifically done big data. I've only started doing big data, and I'm still playing with it, to be honest, in terms of its effectiveness for me. I know for other people, they've found it in various degrees of helpful, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely helpful how much I'm willing to just abandon my thought about something in favor of what might come out of big data. I'm still wrestling with. But yeah, I've done focus groups where I have tried different things like this on, like to find out, is something what is a universal human thing like this?
But never like an actual case, like trying it the way that without involving any of these like primary human, I don't know what you call it, feelings or.
It's hard for me to do it. I mean, what I'm doing oftentimes, I'm coming in late, right? So the case is put together.
Okay, and you're being brought in.
And so in some way, in those cases, like the cases that I build from the beginning, this stuff gets built into it because it's kind of just who I am at this point, right? So this does get built in. And there's the whole bringing everybody into it. I mean, the defense lawyer ends up being involved in it. The adjusters being, whatever. Everybody gets sucked into the humanity of the case. When I'm brought in late and a case is put together and the case is not being resolved, so this is the closest I can come to saying validating it. The case is not being resolved for some reason, okay? And we come in and we look at the case and we reinvent the case. Sometimes both liability and damages, sometimes just liability or damages. But these things that we're talking about are where my mental thought process is when I'm doing that. And it happens on both liability and damages. So like, for instance, it's a shift in a case not long ago. The case was going on for 8 years. It involved the death of a 19-year-old girl who got hit on a highway down here in South Florida in the middle of the night, 3:00 in the morning. And the whole case forever, for 8 years, they were focused on how visible would this dark-skinned 19-year-old who was wearing white pants and a yellow shirt be when she's in the roadway. And there were all these experts talking about lumens and lights and this and that and the other thing. And so all the focus is on that. When I come into a case like that, I'm always looking to shift the focus. It's what I do every time, because you can win or lose the case on how visible this woman is or not in the roadway, this young lady. In that case, I mean, I took a very, very short deposition. I came in the case just 2 weeks before trial. The corporate representative in the case had been involved for the whole time. And he had been involved in the case forever. And it was all about the visibility of this person. So, I mean, to me, I turned around and said, okay, you based your opinion about no responsibility on your driver based on what you believe to be true about the visibility of the woman in the roadway. Yes, yes. Well, let's back up for a second. Isn't it true that one of the things that a truck driver like your driver was supposed to be on the lookout for are vehicles that are look like they've been in a recent crash or they're recently disabled in the roadway, near the roadway? And he said, yeah, that's kind of basic truck driving you want. And so what's the reason that truck drivers are trained to be on the lookout for that as a hazard? And he said, I don't know, maybe they'll jump out in front of you. I said, the disabled car is going to jump out in front? And he goes, pedestrians. And you could see his eyes get really big. I said, so what the truck driver is supposed to be doing is looking for recently disabled vehicles or recently wrecked vehicles because of the known hazard that there may be pedestrians there. Yes.
And is that what had happened?
Yeah. And so the girl had gotten in a wreck. She'd probably gotten discombobulated. She makes her way back up to the roadway and then she gets hit in the roadway. Okay. So, but the point, I'm jumping too fast through this, but the idea is whether it's liability or damages, the idea for me is to shift the focus. On the case with the high heels, it was a trip and fall case. And when the lawyer first came to me, he goes, I'm going to lose this case. He was totally freaked out. I have this picture. As soon as the focus group looked at the picture, they said that your lady's a klutz and she fell over on 2 feet. So if that's true, you have to take that and you have to shift the whole thing. So I look at the picture, I go, yeah, what's wrong in the picture? Well, there's this technical violation of the life safety code. Okay, well now I know how to win the case. Now, instead of being afraid of the picture is your best thing. You get to you say, ladies and gentlemen, I can't wait to show you the picture. Because when you see the picture, you're going to think my client is a total klutz and fell over on 2 feet. But here's but there's this little secret, and there's this violation of the life safety code, and then you explain that that's just a code, that's just a collection of things that trick us humans. Like if you've ever been on like a non-standard staircase where it's like the stairs aren't like the right size and you feel like you're going to bust your butt, you're super careful on the thing, you still feel like you're going to bust your butt. That's a life safety code, So folks, here's what this case is really about is before QT opened their store, should they have had somebody come and look for these kind of violations so that we don't, when we fall down, so that we don't think we're just klutzes or not. Binary choice, right? And I don't care if you're conservative or liberal, for the most part, you're probably going to say, yeah, if there's this code of things that trick us and the law is that somebody's supposed to make sure their store is reasonably safe, then yeah, they should have somebody come look for those things that trick us, right? So now it just shifts the whole mentality of the case. So anyway, that's a awfully long story to make the point. For me, I'm always looking for the flank, change the perspective. And a lot of times on the damages side, it's emotion. On the liability side, it's also recognizing something that's inherently true. If you tell me all the jurors are going to think this when they look at a picture, then I've got to figure out how to take that picture and make it my best piece of evidence, right? And in that case, that's how that turned out. But things like that happen. That's what I do. That's what makes my practice unique.
But do you think that's hard to teach?
Yeah, I do. Because I think it's hard to teach. There's some basic concepts of it, like the one I just said. If you tell me that everybody's going to think X, then I've got to turn that, and that X is negative. I've got to make X positive, or I've got to change the whole case and not make it about X.
This sounds so much fun, by the way.
It is. I mean, for me, that's why I still do this. I mean, I've done well enough where I don't really need anything anymore. So I get to do this now. I don't have to do it. And so for me, that's why I keep talking about iterations of me. I don't want to give this up. I mean, to me, this is a lot more fun than playing golf every day, which would bore. I'd be looking for something to do in 2 days. Right?
It makes sense.
So it's fun.
I love it.
I like it. Yep. So before we go, though, tell me, because I get to interview you too, a little bit.
No,
right?
That's not fair.
Who promised you fair?
That's what I tell my kids. I'm like, life is not fair.
Yeah, I was going to actually, if you denied that, I was going to take a picture of you saying that. I mean, a video out of you saying that to your kid.
I get so annoyed with that concept. And I'm like, well, you're not the same. So do you guys want to start doing everything the same? Because you're not the same person. So why are you looking for when it's convenient, then it should be everything equal.
And how's that working out?
It's working. I mean, yeah, it's working as well as it could with kids. I mean,
I love it because it's honoring their individuality.
Exactly. And that's what I tell them. I'm like, you are a unique person. Like, and even when they're like, oh, who do you love more? Or you love us all equal. I'm like, no, I love you each for who you are. Like, there's no one like you. Period.
That always, whenever I hear of that kind of thing, I always think of that movie, Sophie's Choice.
I don't think I've watched it. Oh my gosh,
it's the most haunting movie ever of all times.
Well, I should go watch it.
It's a Nazi Germany movie.
Oh God.
And Meryl Streep is the actress in it. She's holding her 2 kids. And the Nazi, whatever officer comes and he says, you can keep one of them. The other one.
You're going to make me cry and I don't want to do that. I would just be like, well, can you kill me?
Yeah.
But what,
they answer that in the movie.
Oh, by killing her?
No, by saying, yeah, but we'll first make you watch. No. Oh, anyway, no, it's horrible. It's a horrible movie. And they may not do that. Maybe I'm inventing some of that, but all right, now turn the camera off.
Okay. Well, wait, I have to thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
No, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
I think you're breaking a record.
Wasn't I your first?
No.
I wasn't?
No, sorry.
Can I, is it okay if I just think that way?
You can think that. I was Bob Simon, though.
Oh.
We didn't even have, video, and I just had, the little recorder.
So who's your favorite?
You're one of my favorites, for sure.
One of.
No, you might be
one
my
of
favorite.
My 100 favorite. You're in the top 100. That's for sure.
No, I only have 5 favorites. You're probably
and you're
one.
Between 4 and 5.
I'm
teasing.
The fact
I'm trying to get up. You see how this? No, you're like.
But I also don't want to hurt other people's feelings.
I know
But I always do tell people that
when we go off the record, she's going to tell me I'm
That it's you?
That's me.
I mean, you've been on more than anyone else, so like that should
So people should read into that.
yeah, that should say something. I like that you're willing to go outside of like running a law firm, trying cases, the law, and like we can talk about other things.
Yeah. So seriously, on another time when we have time, I want to talk about. How do you do that when you because this is a struggle now, is how do you've had successes in life, and then you're building your firm, you have other people you're bringing up, and how do you do that right?
How do you like
How do you bring up people to, because there's a lot involved in, if you've been, and a lot of the people who you do talk to are the proprietors of their business. They're the ones who built it, right? And then they bring people in, and then those people, to some degree, are getting the benefit of the earlier person's successes,
correct?
right? And at some point, once you get to a certain point, I think the idea of what you need from those other people or what you want for those other people starts to change. Like in my case, at first, I really didn't even really I wanted great lawyers to work with, but I didn't need them to be out there getting cases, right? And at some point, you I guess what I'm struggling with is, at some point you start to realize that your relevance is going to diminish over time. And then what have you built? Have you built something that's going to continue beyond you, or is it just going to kind of diminish in relevance as you diminish in relevance? And then what happens to these people that you've helped bring up, but have you mentored them right? I don't know. So am I making any sense?
You are. I mean, I guess I would ask you like why that worries you.
It's increasingly on my mind.
Do you think you feel the need to leave a legacy?
I think I feel responsibility for the people some of whom have worked for me for 20 years. And then what if I left tomorrow? What if Goldberg and I went down in a plane?
They would find some. They would find some. I mean, the fact that they've worked for you for 20 years, I think, would speak highly. I think if you want to mentor lawyers that generate their own cases, like, do you have lawyers that, I assume you have a lot of lawyers that are trying cases and you're mentoring them on that?
Right.
So then I would argue you're doing it right.
Yeah, it's just increasingly on my mind, and
I mean, I would definitely incentivize them. Like, if you bring in a case, you get it.
Oh yeah, we do that. Yeah. But it's interesting though, even that I say, oh yeah, we do that. There's always been a little bit of tension there, because you want, if you're the owner of the business in this line of work, you recognize to some degree that if you're training somebody up, you're training them up to be independent, right, at some level, or are you? You train them up. Do you want them to be full-fledged? They're going to go and generate a bunch of stuff, because at some point they leave you if you do that, right? A lot. So that's the fear of the proprietor, is I'm just going to bring you up and then you're going to go out and do it on your own. I've tried to avoid that by not thinking about it, but I think that subconsciously I have amazing lawyers, and this is not a negative on them, but I've never asked them, and never really, they've always been incentivized. If you bring something in, you get more for bringing it in. But then I really haven't created that many, like I could do better at giving them more opportunities to be out front and center at conferences and things like that. And I'm doing that more now. But anyway, I didn't mean to get us started on a whole nother topic, but to me, it's a good topic for people in our field to be, and I'd like to learn from them.
I don't mind it. I mean, I look at like Bob Simon, who is like your
second favorite person.
My second favorite person, which he's like very okay with his.
It's close, Bob.
Yeah. Sorry, Bob. He'll be okay with this. I think he's done a very good job at knowing that at some point in time, his, associates or partners will go start their own thing. And I think he's okay with that. I think it's just like being okay with that. And there's like always another lawyer that's going to come in and replace that lawyer. And
Sure.
there is a legacy that you're leaving behind by everything they learned. And then they went and opened a firm, right? Like I interviewed someone the other day that worked under Jerry Spence. I thought that was like super cool, right? And here he is like on an interview talking about it, right? Like if you think about it, like that's going to happen, right? So like, I think you know what you need to do and like kind of play with that fear.
Yeah. No, and at this point, it's not fear, but it was, I'm sure. I'm sure there was that.
I think that's normal,
you know.
right? Because it's like, well, I'm bringing you up, I'm doing all this, and then you're going to go start your own thing. But I just think that's like the circle of life in the legal space.
I agree with that.
And some will never leave. Like there are lawyers that don't want to run their own business. And I mean, there's always like you could always make people partners.
Yeah. No, and I have partners.
Oh,
but
well, there you go.
But they're anyway. I think it's one of the universal topics for lawyers at some point. It's like you at first you just like you're just about like just let me be somebody in the world, right? Let me have enough to let me just get recognized enough in the world and do my kind of, and then you start bringing people on, and then it's like you said, it's sort of the natural life progression. But we never want to, we never want to acknowledge the feeling of that we're going to lose relevance at some point, right?
Yeah.
And so knowing when to do what in that regard is something I'm playing with, and recognizing that probably have more fears around those things than I would have admitted, before I would have even focused on before.
But why are you afraid of having less relevance?
I think that's you don't think that's universal? That people
I think it's a fear of death.
Yeah, it's a fear of death.
I think
it's
that's the ultimate fear.
Right. It's the fear of, right.
And like this ending.
Yeah, you've worked really hard to achieve something, and it's like the business equivalent of death. It's the same reason why some people, when they build a company and exit out of a company, they feel a death. They feel, it's the same. I'm sure it's the same psychologically.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. I mean, it sounds like that's what it is. I mean, there's nothing that you can really do about it. I mean, I guess you could just really mentor.
You can,
people.
but I mean, like for me, what I'm telling myself, coaching myself through this very moment is, you got to just welcome it. I mean, welcome it as this part of
life. It's
part of the whole thing. So yeah, of course, at some point, whether you want to or not, you're going to lose relevance, right?
Totally.
So why?
I mean,
so it's not the fact that you're going to lose relevance that hurts. It's the effort to not feel it.
Yeah.
Right. So what if you just go ahead and feel it? Just go ahead and say it's part of the progression of life. So why, it's like telling water not to run downhill. I mean, it's going to happen.
Totally. I would say feel it, and then at the same time, be grateful.
Absolutely. I love that. That's how we should end today, on gratefulness.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it.
Bye.
I'm going to do the
number one is over and out.
Thank you so much to Joe for everything he shared with us today. If you found this story valuable, please share it with someone you want to see succeed. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave a 5-star review. It goes a long way to help others discover the show.